when he says, I'm going to return and rely, which is the Gui Yi, take refuge and rely, rather than directing these people to look outside for deliverance, for liberation, for understanding insight, he is in a sense using the refuge ceremony as a mirror, holding up this mirror to get them to reflect within and access the triple jewel within their own nature, he calls it. So let's begin. He says, good and wise friends, now that you've made the four encompassing vows, I will confer upon you the unconditioned precepts of the three refuges. Good and wise friends, return to the awakened, doubly complete, honored one. Return to what is genuine and true, the honor and dignity and freedom from desire. Return to what is pure, the honored and esteemed among the multitudes. From this day forward, call awakening your teacher, and never again take refuge with demonic cults or outside ways. Constantly use the three treasures of your essential nature to verify and confirm, and we bracket what is true. Good and wise friends, I exhort you all to take refuge in and return to the three treasures of your own essential nature. And then in this very quintessential statement, he says, the Buddha is awakening. The Dharma is what is right and true, and the Sangha is purity. And then he goes on, when your own mind takes refuge in awakening, error and delusion do not occur. The lessening of desires brings contentment, and you can free yourself up from wealth and sensuality. This is called the doubly complete honored one. When your mind takes refuge with what is right, appropriate, and true in every moment of thought, there are no wrong views. Lacking any wrong views, there's no selfish egotism, no arrogance, craving, and clinging. This is called the honored one, free from desire. When your mind takes refuge with purity, your own essential nature is completely unattached and unstained by any state of longing and desire. This is called the honored one, esteemed among the multitudes. Okay, so a long passage, and in this there are phrases and terms that are standard that you'll see in these ceremonies that go back hundreds and hundreds of years. And if you've ever gone through this ceremony, you probably recognize some of these recurring phrases. The honored among the multitudes, the three refuges, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, and so forth. But he's now twisting this. I wouldn't say twisting it. That's really not what he's doing, except in the sense that he's twisting it to make them feel a little pressure. That's what I mean by, I don't mean by twisting, distorting. I mean, he's turning up the heat, if you can use that expression. Again, sometimes people come with the attitude, I will be saved, I will be liberated, I take refuge in this teacher or in this monk or this nun. And then have an attitude of the other power that they have, either because they have personal powers and virtue and cultivation, or because they're mediators between heaven and man, that they had then serve as the bridge, the savior, literally the redeemer, to take one through. And so basically you just hop on and go for the ride. You just happen to hit the right bus at the right time and you're off. And you have this feeling as if you will be conveyed along, you would be then transported through the energy of the religious teacher, so forth. And he's turning this completely around and saying there is no way that you can really take refuge with a triple jewel except by returning the light to illumine within. The Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha are externally manifest symbolically, but internally that's where the real three jewels reside, in your own nature. All Buddhas, all Bodhisattvas become Buddhas and Bodhisattvas not through someone else's salvation or intervention, but through the transformation and cultivation of their own minds and bodies and natures. This is, quote, the secret. This is the secret Dharma. Now you can see how if you came for a quick trip or a sort of a other power thing, this might be a little, I don't know, maybe a little disappointing, maybe a little bit confusing, and then ultimately a little scary, because he is saying the ultimate responsibility for your liberation resides in you. Now, at the same time, what he's saying here is, but the wherewithal, the tools you need to accomplish this do come from these teachings. And that's why he says, I think, I'm going to confer upon you the unconditioned precepts of the three refuges. Normally, people don't think of the three refuges as a precepts, right? I'm just saying, how many people have actually gone through this ceremony of taking refuge? Yeah, more than a few hands. So some people say, yes, I did. I thought I did. I did, but I'm not sure. The hand goes up like this. But anyway, I think you're given the option of taking precepts at that time or not, right? You don't automatically take the precepts, although they're offered, correct? And now there's this sort of modern accommodation. You can choose one of the five, two of the five. You can shape it sort of like, yeah, killing, I could probably do that, and stealing, except for my IRS tax. Yeah, I could probably do that. And now the section misconduct one, what do you mean by that? If it means that, I could probably work on that one, because that hasn't been so great. You go through this whole thing, and then they get to, what is it? Intoxicants. And there's a little trouble with that. And then the lying thing. So something like I'll take one and part of two and then three. And this is not called the Great Resolve. These, by the way, these are the standard. These are called Panchasila, 5 precepts. These are the 5 basic precepts that one would take. And then to get more elaborate, you can take the Bodhisattva precepts of 10 major and 48 minor. And then when monks and nuns ordain, they take a whole slew of these, 300 some, 248, 300 some. It's immense. But they all basically are variations off the 5 here. They're just elaborations of these themes. Because there's different ways you can steal. There's all kinds of ways you can lie, right? I mean, and all of these really came about because the Buddha said, just be straight, be true, cultivate the way and realize Buddhahood. And then somebody says, well, so-and-so okay, so don't do that anymore. And then came a precept. And so-and-so, really, they did that? That's not straight and true, but okay, so now we're going to have this against taking this form of life and telling that kind of lie. Oh, and stealing. Now, stealing doesn't just mean you take what isn't given to you. You take more than your share. Oh. Because the monks were going out and saying, well, the Buddha said, live a simple life. With freedom from desires, you will experience contentment. You'll feel the wholeness of yourself, not being driven by your passions all the time. So reduce your desires and know that contentment. And they said, yeah, but I want to reduce my desires in a grand way. I want to build a kuti, a meditation place that's, not just 3 by 4, but 10 by 20. And I want to have in there teak and redwood, and decorating. And I want to have sandalwood incense. And my meditation cushion, I want to be made of silk, stuffed with the da-da-da-da-da. And the Buddha said, no. By the way, if you build that kuti, you're cutting down trees, and the trees you cut down are the habitat of other living beings. So by expanding your desire for your meditation place, you're actually reducing what's available in terms of resource for others. This is stealing. Oh, really? So then the Buddha said, by the way, you can give, because the monks would come back and say, well, if I don't have anything, how can I give? All right, and this is how they thought. And so the Buddha said, well, you can first of all give dharma. Oh, okay. And the Buddha said, but giving dharma means the highest form of giving dharma is to cultivate according to the teachings, not just talk about it. Oh, and he said you can give by reducing your share. This is one of the forms of giving, by the way. Giving by reducing your share. One that actually has a sort of purchase these days, doesn't it, if you think about it? And think about the immense amount of consumption of resources that's going on and the garbage associated with the dump, and you just look at what's happening in terms of using up the planet's resources. Giving by reducing your share is a very radical notion. And it doesn't mean you put yourself into poverty or you put yourself into sort of a self-flagellated absence of things. You just find the balance point where it's enough. What's enough? And it's really a tough question. When is it enough? Clothes, food, sleep, possessions, books, whatever. When is enough? Where is that spot? And finding that could be a very profound place of self-cultivation. Especially, I must say, in a climate or an environment where the bombardment of the senses for wanting more, craving more, needing more, thinking you don't have enough is 24/7. It's just everywhere. I can't even use my cell phone without getting, how shall I say, input that I need, I should have, I'm missing out on, and da-da-da-da-da. And so it's pretty hard. Even writing on BART, you're constantly getting bombarded with this. So unless you develop some awareness and some space for quietness to feel how those things have an effect, it's easy to get just caught up in it. Really, it's easy to just be caught up and then just consume without thinking, where's this going? Anyhow, so he's saying these three refuges, he's calling them unconditioned precepts or precepting. In other words, he's saying pick these things up. Don't just take them, I have taken by faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, but I'm actually using these to regulate myself in some way. Because precepts really have to do with regulating. I mean, the word precept can be interpreted in many ways, but in the Buddhist sense, it's meant to be a dynamic thing that you're doing and not something you just take a vow to say, I'm not going to. So in every way, you're regulating yourself. You're sort of using the three refuges as a regulating device. What does it mean, moment to moment, thought to thought, to take refuge with the Buddha of my own nature? What would that mean? What would it mean to take refuge, to return and rely on the Dharma of my own nature and the Sangha of my own nature? He's going that way. And he's saying by doing that, you are actually regulating yourself. You're putting yourself into a kind of a harness that allows you to move forward and follow those vows that you just made. So he says, I will confer upon you. Now he does that as a formal thing because he's up there wearing the red robe and conferring. But actually, he's not conferring upon them. He's actually empowering them to take it up themselves. He just uses this language to keep the formal ceremony going. Good and wise friends, return to the awakened, doubly complete, honored one. Now, usually the doubly complete, honored one means what? Well, in Chinese, I think it's Liang Zhu Zun, right? What does that mean? Liang is two. Huh? Perfections? What are the two? See, he says doubly complete, doubly perfect, honored one. Now, usually this is an epithet for the Buddha. The Buddha is called the doubly complete, honored one. It's a formal phrase. Say a little louder.
Blessings and virtue.
Okay, blessings and virtue. Usually it's blessings and wisdom. So this means someone has cultivated their person so that both their wisdom and their blessings, the material aspects of their lives, are full and sufficient. That's what it means. Sometimes I've seen it translated because zu can also be, it can be complete, but it can also be foot. And so sometimes I've seen this as the two-footed honored one. And I remember I saw that in an early translation. I was wondering, well, the two-footed honored one is like biped. And then somebody says, because the Buddha had really cute feet, pretty feet. It was one of the signs. I think it doesn't mean the two-footed one, but you could make a case for that. But here he says, return to what is genuine and true and honor the dignity, freedom of desire. That's a whole different take than taking refuge with something outside. You return to what's genuine and true within yourself, the honor and the dignity of freedom of desire. So he's saying that the person who is free from these kinds of cravings and desires has a certain gravitas, has a certain dignity about them. And again, if you go back and look at the manifestation of these things, if you want to call this virtue, this is something that's evident in a person. You can actually see it. You can see these qualities of character because it radiates through the skin, radiates through the emotions and even the hormones. And their composure and their dignity and whatnot comes from this management over not suppression and not repression, but a transformation of these desires into a freedom from that. When he says return to what is pure, this is the second one. And the honor one esteemed among the multitudes. From this day forward, call awakening your teacher. This is very interesting. In other words, the teacher is to be sought in the process of your own understanding and awakening, and not in an external reliance on a teacher. That eventually the teacher is only to be a catalyst to get you to find the teacher within. And that's called the good knowing advisor within as opposed to without. And never again take refuge with demonic cults and outside ways. This needs to be somewhat interpreted. The outside way here basically means putting your energy and your effort and your reliance and your hopes and your efforts into something outside your own person to liberate, to transform. It means literally seeking the way or the path to liberation outside your own mind and your own nature. That's what outside ways mean. So do not interpret this as, quote, other religions. It's not what that means. It means any teaching, and it could be even if you're using Buddhism in this way, not to cultivate yourself, but to seek other power liberation only, that you are doing an outside way within the proper teaching. So it's not the teachings per se, but it's how you're applying them psychologically and where your effort's going. The effort he's talking about is there's no liberation, no understanding that doesn't come through cultivating your own person. It doesn't come from outside. And the most that comes outside is inspiration, a little modeling, maybe some attunement every once in a while, but the effort is self-driven, self-dynamic all the time. This is really important to understand. Outside ways originally was very interesting. Even at the time of the Buddha, when this expression was used, it meant literally outside the teaching, the hearing space of the Buddha. In other words, you didn't have access to these teachings. You were outside the way, because this is low-tech society, right? So low-tech society, the only way you're going to hear the Buddha is to draw near. And since there wasn't any written works at this time, there was no way that you could have been in the hearing sphere. So literally the outside way meant outside the way of the teaching of this particular sage. You were not in that circle or in the proximity to that to actually have access to it. It wasn't judgmental, it was just descriptive. You hadn't heard this, you hadn't seen this yourself. So that's where the outside way begins. But now it comes to have a more psychological dimension. Where are you looking for happiness, peace, liberation, and understanding? Where are you investing your resources? And if you're investing in other than your own nature and your own mind and your own body and your own life and your own here and now, he says it's a waste. This is not to take refuge. It's actually to waste your time. So remember before he said, what was he saying? What does it mean? It doesn't mean that I, Hui Neng, liberate them. And now he's continuing that theme here. So I think if I go back over this one, we have the doubly awakened one, that's the Buddha, but that's now talked about your own Buddha. That's that first paragraph. I'm trying to think, how does the Sangha get woven into this? But that would be the pure. Oh, okay, here we go. Sorry, just for those of you who are sticklers on sequence 1, 2, 3s. Well, he missed something. I usually get this as an email afterwards. You missed this. So the first line, awakened, doubly complete, honored one, that's the Buddha. Second line, genuine and true, that's the Dharma. And the third one, pure and honored and esteemed among the multitudes, that's the Sangha. And then there's a footnote below referring to the community of the Buddha's followers as the Sangha. Now this is, again, although he's saying Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, he's got an internal dimension here. And then he goes over, constantly use these three treasures. Use these three treasures of your essential nature to verify and confirm what is good and true. So here it is. You have faith, you have trust, but it's trust in the method. So faith here is a means to an end. It's not the end. You don't say, wow, I just came to Berkeley Buddhist Monastery. I took refuge to the Triple Jewel. I have faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. I am free and happy and blah, blah, blah. No. He's just saying use these. Well, what does he mean by using them? How would you use them? As opposed to just having taken them. You actually take these things up and you're cultivating the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha of your own essential nature. Wow. And that's very different. So when he says use them to verify and confirm, this is very interesting. Why would you have to verify and confirm? You see, go ahead.
See for yourself.
Well, if you just took refuge with the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you have complete faith in the Triple Jewel. What is there to verify and confirm? Right? See, it's like, wait a minute. What is he doing here? Would there be some doubt? Could you have some doubt about this? Like you came, you did the ceremony, and it's like, okay, you might even get your little card or your red book or whatever I don't know what they give now. What do they give? Little book? Yeah, you got your card-carrying Buddhist, so now you got your book. And it says, I took refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and the Sangha. At night, when you go to sleep, and in the morning when you wake up at 3 o'clock and there's nobody around you and that existential emptiness starts to descend, do you go, yeah? Or you go, whoa, 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 where's my card? Because that act that you're doing is merely a symbolic first step to returning and relying on yourself. So in doing that, you would have to confirm and rely for yourself. Come on. You guys are all pretty smart and cool. You do not take it on faith alone, most things, right? The food you eat, the places you go, the people you have relationships with, it's all experiential and experimental. It's trial and error. You know for yourselves. This is how you all work. This is to have the inquiring mind, right? And even if you do take refuge with the Triple Jewel, you'll know in the depths of your heart, nothing happens without you doing it, you accomplishing it, you verifying it, you confirming it. Otherwise, there's always this little gnawing doubt. Did I really? And how does that work? Because when I eat, Hung sure can't eat for me. I mean, I can give him all these food offerings, but Hung sure can't. I have to eat myself. And, you can't sleep for me. Like, it doesn't work for that. And you can't wear clothes for me or air conditioning. It's like, so why would your liberation understanding be any different? It's like all of a sudden the model goes, I eat, I'm full. I wear clothes, I'm warm or cold. I sleep and I'm rested. And I take refuge in the Buddha says it. Huh? What? It would only work if you yourself do it. I don't know of anything that doesn't work that way. So what he's doing is he's both being very pragmatic, but he's also trying to inspire to verify and confirm. This is not just the Sixth Patriarch, by the way. This, to me, is actually a quintessential statement at the heart of the teachings themselves. If you look at the most fundamental of the teachings, the Four Noble Truths that you've heard about. Anybody hear about the Four Noble Truths? Not the Three Little Pigs, it's the Four Noble Truths. It's different. Okay, Four Noble Truths are, some people consider one of the essential guidelines for entering the Dharma, the truth of, dukkha, suffering, dissatisfaction, the unsatisfactoriness that we face. The second truth is, or the second posited proposition, is that there's a cause for this. It's not just random or capricious. The third one is, you could end this. There's an ending of this. And of course, the fourth one, which is really important, how do you do it? That's the fourth truth. But in the Four Truths, there's three turnings. When the Buddha taught the Four Truths, he taught them in he called three turnings, literally three teachings. And the first one was just basically declaring. It was declarative. These are the Four Truths. And the second one, and he said, I've tasted these, I know these. But the second turning was exhorting. You yourselves should know this. You yourselves should know your suffering. Well, I know. No, know it. Know its cause. Know how you can turn it off. Know how you do that. So it's exhorting them to then know that for themselves. But the third one, which is really interesting, is nah. So I declare, I exhort you, and then what? Come on, we've been through this. Some of you have been looking at me like, we haven't done this before in class? What's the third turning?
I realized it or something?
Yeah, it's basically verify and confirm. Know for yourselves through your own doing of it. And the Buddha, in many of his teachings, both, well, you want to do this Mahayana, Theravada, whatever you want to do, the message clearly in there is you must know for yourselves. You must experience it for yourself, must verify it for yourself, otherwise it's not yours. So even in the Four Truths, if you say I believe in the Four Truths, you'd have to go through that final phase to confirm and validate that. In this sense, I guess you could say it's somewhat scientific. I use that in cautionary terms here. It's only scientific in the sense that you're not asked to just use faith or hope or trust in something, but you're actually asked to go out and verify and confirm it for yourself. So you could say these teachings, what he's presenting here is a hypothesis. You could say, well, he says I got a Buddha, Dharma, Sangha in my own. I don't know. Come on, that's a little far-fetched. I'm just an ordinary person. Right. But then either accepting that blindly or rejecting it offhand are both two extremes. And what he's saying, test it out and experience that for yourself. Experiment with this. Try this out. Try experimenting with these teachings and see if you don't confirm and verify that this is in fact your potential and your nature. How else would you know? If you don't, then you know it's not. But if you do, you walk the same path the Buddha walked. So again, in the exhortation, the Buddha clearly says, the only reason I'm here is to point out the path, not to save you. I can't save you. If I could, I would. I can't. Because it's in the nature of things that you cannot do that for another person. But I can show you the way, I can encourage you to walk the way, and I can say, and when you know for yourselves, you've done the work that needs to be done. So you can see if you came to have this sort of sense of Hui Neng's going to save me or whatnot, he's putting you right back on your own resources here to cultivate. And that's why he says, he comes into this, and in the last part he says, constantly use them to self-discover, to self-awaken, to self-validate and verify. Did what I say, think, or feel match up? What are the consequences of what I say, feel, and where does this lead? Does it lead to liberation or not liberation? Does it liberate others or not? Does it make the planet a better place or not? You can go through the whole list, and you're saying, well, if it's Dharma, it should be good and true, and it should be liberating, and it should be positive. And if it's not, something's wrong with my walking of this then. So you're actually, this is what mindfulness is. When he says a constant mindfulness, it means you've got to be aware of cause and effect in everything that's happening here as you check yourself. That's why he says, I say the Buddha is awakening, not some being in a far-off land. I say the Dharma is what is right and true. The teachings, the Dharma is Dharma because it's right and true. It's not right and true because it's Dharma. You know what I'm saying? It's like, what is right and true is Dharma. Let's go backwards. What is right and true is Dharma, as things really are. Dharma is not necessarily just right and true because it's Dharma. It's the other way around. So whatever liberates, whatever transforms, whatever leads to this kind of understanding, that's Dharma. And if it doesn't, it's not Dharma. Now this gets even trickier because the Buddha said, in the phases of the human condition, certain medicine, Dharma, has to be prescribed appropriately at the right time in the right place, or it's not Dharma. Oh, wait a minute. Well, you should cut off desires. That's Dharma. Yeah, but that's a dose of medicine. Given at the right time in the right place, it could have a salutary effect and lead to some understanding of liberation. Given in a punitive, judgmental, righteous way, it has the opposite effect. So there's no teaching, the Buddha said, that is per se appropriate and right teaching unless it liberates and causes this effect in the listener. That's why in the Lankavatara Sutra, the Buddha said only a teaching is that which has this effect. And if it doesn't have an effect, it's not this teaching. So you see the whole definition is not some preset ideology as Dharma, but it's done in the organic dynamic sense. What is causing this liberation? And if that's causing the liberation, that's why the Buddha clearly said, I'm not the only one who spoke Dharma. The Buddha said, he said, anybody who's awakened speaks Dharma. Anybody who speaks Dharma is awakened, anybody who's awakened speaks Dharma, and it doesn't have to be a person even. It can be a god, it can be a spirit, it can be a kid. Whatever is liberating in a sense is the Dharma. That's why this teaching doesn't have to go back to the Buddha said. Oh, you can't prove the Buddha said this. Of course you can't prove it. There's no recordings. Even if there was recordings, we know they can be doctored, hacked, right? So how would you know what the Buddha said? Except by verifying and confirming it through your own direct experience and matching that against all these other things and saying, okay. Otherwise, there's no way to say the Buddha said. Sorry, I had to go into that a little bit. Maybe instead of going on here, I want to talk a little bit about demonic cult. So this was a Tang dynasty. Why did he say demonic cults? Don't take refuge. Okay, let me ask you, are any of you taking refuge in demonic cults? Have you? Are you? Will you? They're connected to the outside ways thing. In other words, if you're seeking outside and not seeking within, then you're prone to, leaning towards, susceptible to an outside teaching teacher. And when that happens, you suspend the critical faculty of trusting yourself and judgment that you need to walk this path. So it's a double whammy. By looking outside, seeking outside, you underdevelop the strength of your own discernment. And by underdeveloping that, you become prone. It's a vicious cycle, right? So he's not encouraging people to even stay with him. He's kicking them out at this assembly. You're going to see at the assembly, he says, get out and go. He doesn't encourage them to stay. So I don't know what the demonic cults of the Tang dynasty were. I do know there were some that the Buddha described during his lifetime. But I'm more interested in maybe mapping out two that I didn't join, two that I know of that I encountered, and maybe share them with the sense of, let's shed some light on this. Because in this teaching, heaven, hell, demons, Buddhas, living beings are not distinctly different kinds, but they're along a continuum of possibilities of consciousness. This is really important to understand. So that for one to be a Buddha or an ordinary person, the Sixth Patriarch says it's just in your thinking. Thought after thought unconfused, thought after thought you're a Buddha. One thought unconfused, one thought you're not a Buddha, one thought confused, you're not a Buddha, thought after thought confused, you're not a Buddha, thought after thought. Buddhas and living beings are non-dual. They're differences in manifestation of the same nature. Whoa. Demons, sages, asuras, animals, ghosts, all the 10 realms are just along the continuum of consciousness. Okay? So this is very important to understand. So these are not distinct things. When we say demons, you're thinking, I don't know what you're thinking, I know this movie, what did I see this movie with? Is it Keanu Reeves? No, it's not Keanu Reeves. Who's the other guy who does? Famous actor, he gets possessed, he's exorcist, blah, blah, blah. Good, you haven't seen it. That's the first time I mentioned a movie and nobody was saying. You think of some sort of hellish disfigurement with a tail, perhaps fangs, the modern movie. Yeah, the eye, right. Drizzling with saliva and whatnot and about to eat you up. Any other images you have of demons? Oh, come on, bring them out tonight. I grew up in a tradition where they were clearly graphically displayed. You can look at Hieronymus Bosch's work, and see the portrayal of the demonic realms from the late medieval time. There's modern versions. There's a movie out every week with, demons. Okay, what's being talked about here is sort of like more the real thing, where the realm between that is really a shift in consciousness, not so much a shift in genetics. And so the two that I was going to talk a little bit about tonight just relate to you. were two that Hung Sure and I both encountered during the time that we were doing the bowing pilgrimage. So one, and I'm going to say this, and then some people may say, well, that really wasn't demonic cult. I think it was a group of people that were following a charismatic leader called Jim Jones. I don't know, some of you probably know about this, some of you don't know about this. This was in the 70s, took place I'm trying to think when it ended. I think it basically ended midway through our pilgrimage. We were out bowing, and then somebody came and said, "Did you hear that this charismatic leader from San Francisco led his cult followers down to Guyana, and there was a mass suicide. Over 300 children died from taking Kool-Aid laced with cyanide, right? Cyanide laced Kool-Aid. And so you're trying to figure out, but these people took refuge in him. You see, this is what I'm trying to point to. When you take refuge and rely, he's pointing you to take refuge and rely on your own nature. But when you go outside, it can be hit or miss. Even if you find a good teacher, the good teacher will be constantly pushing you to find the good teacher within and fly on your own and not cling. And so he was interested in amassing a following. And often with the demonic cults, it's not like one ideology or another, it's like a mix and amalgam. So he had, anybody know what his particular mix was, or what his promise was? It's very interesting. Huh? No, Jim Jones, he started as in Indiana. I mean, that's like apple pie, right? Demons from Indiana? Sorry, that can happen. He started as a Marxist. He was a convinced Marxist. He worshipped Stalin and Lenin and Karl Marx, and that's what he read. And then he realized that it wasn't getting much purchase anywhere. And then he saw that there was a faith healer in Indiana who both got disciples and followers. So he kind of moved himself into a Marxist missionary faith healer. And then he eventually found his way to the West Coast. What's interesting is he was up in Ukiah for a while because he kind of blended all this together: Marxism, missionary zeal of forms of Christianity, and then faith healing, and then a very socially engaged in general. I mean, he was so socially engaged. And I'm sharing you with you. You know Willie Brown? Willie Brown was a former Speaker of the House. Willie Brown thought he was the cat's meow. Willie Brown made a statement. He says, "This man is a combination of Martin Luther King, Angela Davis, Albert Einstein, and Mao." So, I mean, when this kind of mesmerization, this kind of praise comes, he seemed to generate all those different qualities. But eventually, he wanted to create this socialist heaven on earth. So it was a socialist heaven on earth with this evangelical faith healing guru thing. He was the guru in charge. And finally, one thing led to another where all the disciples ended up in Guyana. They killed a congressman that flew in to check this thing out, and then the mass suicide occurred. It was one of the more shocking events I can remember at the time. I mean, to me at this time, it was the 9/11 and we were out there, and it just blew us away. You could feel the energy just kicked out of your body when you heard what had happened. And this was done in the name of religion. And then Hung Sure and I were going, oh my God, we're out here bowing, and somebody could think that we're part of some cult or something and get really on us because of this event that occurred. But that's maybe one example I would give of a demonic cult. Where was a demon? It was in the minds of the people, swayed by the mind of this man who stepped off the way really deeply. And so he didn't look like a demon. I mean, he was so impressive to the Speaker of the House that he praised him in this way. Okay, and so demons don't look in a particular way, or a demonic cult doesn't look, but you have to examine where this is going. That was one. Some of you remember this? Okay. Oh yeah, it was absolutely incredible. The other one was not so much a heaven on earth. This was a heaven in heaven. Actually, a heaven in space. Yeah, this was the other group. So we're out there bowing, and every time you come up for a bow, you go down for a bow, and we would bow the Avatamsaka, and as our teacher said, you would bow to return the light and get rid of your bad habits and faults. Every time you go down, you'll discover one. Come up, go down and empty another one, keep emptying this way, and eventually you might, get a little handle on your lives if you just empty out all your habits and faults. And bowing 2.5 years, it just kind of skimmed the foam off the top. But anytime, you go down, and we never knew what we'd come up to. Because sometimes you just come up to the wonderful ocean and the breeze, and then other times you'd come up to a CHP cop, or you come up to a Hell's Angel, or you come up to some group. So this time, I went down for a bow, and I came up, and there was all these white-robed people standing around me. Now, if I'd been looking outside, I would say, saved! I'm saved! Here they are, the angels. But they weren't, and they asked me, what are you doing, so foolishly doing this? And I said, well, we're doing, bow. Oh, you don't have to work so hard. All you have to do is come join us. Liberation and enlightenment and nirvana is at hand with our group. And so they wanted us to follow them. And so I asked them, well, what is it that you're about? I shouldn't have. I kept bowing, but it was curiosity. And so they were a very interesting religious, millenarians, that expression. This means that the end of time is coming soon. This is a belief that there's going to be the end of time coming. And they've been around for a long time, these end of time groups. Time just seems to go on, but they're always predicting the end of time, and this was going to happen in the 1970s, and so they had a belief that there was, how should I put it? They were what they called, let me see what their language was for this, ancient astronauts. Ancient astronauts came down and they seeded the earth way back, before the Big Bang perhaps even. And those seeds are the current humanity. So all the people on earth today are the seeds that alien astronauts seeded and the harvest is coming due right around the time we were out there in the 70s. And the harvest of those seeds were going to be those people who realized the truth of this, and they would be transported up to the heaven beyond, and everybody would be left here to wallow in a nuclear Armageddon and be destroyed. So that was their basic teaching. And what they were doing was, they used, I can remember they used phrases from the Bible. They're quoting Old and New Testament. They were also using sci-fi. So they would quote Arthur Clarke. Who was the guy that did the Scientology? Right, and Highland, and they would quote sci-fi, the Bible, Madame Blavatsky, right? And they were recruiting Hung Sure and I as part of their crew. So what they called their disciples were not disciples, but the crew. So we were being welcomed. I don't know why we qualified. That's a question, why they saw us as good candidates, but they saw us as likely candidates for the crew that would get on this spaceship that they were going to do and go off to this heaven afterwards. And now the thing that was going was, where is the spaceship? You can't see it yet. So this was a faith. But you know where it's hidden? No. Behind Hale-Bopp Comet. So you all know what a comet is, right? There's periodically, comets have ways of triggering all this kind of stuff. It's very interesting. So the comet Hale-Bopp was making its passage through the Earth at this time. This was 1977, 78. And their teacher, who was a born-again guy from Texas who said he was Jesus come again, so he was Jesus New Age. That was also his credential. And his girlfriend ran the cult. And they convinced everybody to have faith in them that the comet was behind Hale-Bopp, so you couldn't see it. But if you could get to the other side of Hale-Bopp, you were in, and off you'd go to the heaven. And so they got a little nervous because, not everybody was feeling this transported thing. So to have the transportation happen in the timely way when the Hale-Bopp comet arrived they decided to facilitate the 3-stage takeoff with suicide. So then 39 of these members, there was a cult based in San Diego. It was very funny how they did this. They had very neatly kept bunk beds, and all wore white tennis shoes. And they arranged all their tennis shoes and everything, and then they laid in bed just like this, and they took the, I don't know what, they may take cyanide or something too, and then they all died and went off to behind Hale-Bopp Comet. That was that group that Hung-Sure and I had an opportunity to join, and we didn't. But here, you're looking at some of the same elements. The faith and trust is in the teacher or in the guru, not in oneself. There's no energy for self-transformation or change that's involved, simply going along with it. Deliverance is either some kind of imagined heaven on earth or heaven beyond, but never right now under your feet, which is what the Sixth Patriarch says. He says, don't look for it beyond. It's right on the ground you're standing right now. And it's not outside of this here and now world. So I just wanted to maybe share 2 of these. You probably know of others, and I don't think they're gone. I don't think these kinds of movements or cults have completely disappeared at all. And in fact, I would guess you could probably turn on your TV at night and start surfing some channels and find variants of these themes still out there. So I wanted to illustrate this, that it has very real aspect of being misled and taken into a group, but it also has a kind of more subtle aspect of being careful where you're looking, what you're seeking for, and where you're putting your energy. And so the cultivation part that he's talking about here by using the 3 refuges is you're using them as grist to cultivate yourself, to perfect yourself, to rub. You're using the precepts in this way as opposed to, how should I say it, instead of or a substitute for. So this is really important. Anyhow, I'll stop tonight. We'll pick up. I didn't even get to the part of the passage I read, but I wanted to share that because I think we can misread these sections to see them as something extraterrestrial or far out or not within the realm of the human, and they're very much within this. Okay, no questions that you want? Oh, yes.
So how would you draw the line for demonic? Like, I was once invited to go to some sort of Eastern religion group, and the person inviting me said, oh, it's great, you just chant and all your wishes come true. And I thought, doesn't quite sound right, so fortunately I didn't go, but they didn't all commit mass suicide, so, like, where do you...
Yeah,
kind of hindsight.
I'm always on eBay looking for Dorothy's red shoes. You click them, make your way. Anybody know Dorothy I'm talking about? Wizard of Oz, right? She just clicks her shoes and wishes, and then she goes off. That one, I would say, is pretty obvious to me because it's simply by chanting that something magical happens. And there's no magic presented in these fundamental teachings. And if you look at the early teachings too, Buddhism, you don't find any magic. You find the bittersweet effort of cultivating, changing, transforming, gaining insight. And even chanting can be used as a form of meditation, of mindfulness, of calming and centering. But there's actually a warning in the teachings that if you think chanting in and of itself will lead you to liberation, the end of suffering, it's actually a, quote, a wrong view. Now, we'll go into this next week because you're asking the wrong views. These are very interesting what these wrong views are. It's not like, oh, you got up on the wrong side of the bed and you don't. It's an actual view that by chanting or by strictly holding formalistic precepts, you will get liberation. So this is actually one form of wrong view. You're thinking wrong view is, well, I believe there's an eternal self or something, or so forth. That is, in fact, a wrong view, but the more subtle wrong views are views like this. So it's actually misusing the Dharma, thinking it can produce an end that it can't. Did you join? Oh, that's why your wishes haven't been fulfilled. Yes.
Would you consider taking hallucinogenics or some sort of shortcut to enlightenment to be a demonic cult?
The thing with the shortcuts is they cut it short. If you know what I mean. They actually cut off the root of awakening. Because, again, that's an external agent. Now, it does have a catalytic effect on you, but it's not a permanent transformation. It's just a chemical transformation that we still don't understand what's going on. But in fact, all it does is temporarily shift consciousness. And with those hallucinogenic agents, what the message has been about them is very interesting. It's the set and the setting that's a primary determining factor of what you experience. The set is the mindset that you bring to it, and the setting is the environment in which you take it. Those two have much more profound effect than, well, set and setting is just another way of talking made from the mind. So it's not, there's nothing magical in that agent except that it causes a transformation. But there's people that have fallen off ladders and opened one of their eyes, you know. But that doesn't mean it's liberating. There's a new article in the New Yorker.
I just read it.
Right.
On the way.
Right. There's an.
I knew you read it.
Well, you know, it's not just the 60s. It's making a comeback.
Right.
Okay, right here in Berkeley and San Francisco, you could go tonight and have a little messenger sit you down, and they have a brew of ayahuasca, which is a plant that started South America. It's in Hawaii now, and you cocked it, and you do this whole thing, and then you drink it, and it's absolutely disgusting. And the first awakening you have is vomiting. Well, this is like peyote of the, you know, anyhow. And then people have various experiences, and some of them see the oneness and everything and go ecstatic for as long as it lasts.
They want it again and again.
And they want it again and again, and so it's enlightenment is habit forming in that way. Others vomit and cry all night, or curse, or end up in ERs. And you can see, you know, it's just a continuum of consciousness. So whether these things, there's an actual field in the American Academy of Religion called entheogens. Entheogens. Now that's an academic way of studying entheogen, meaning theo is God, and gen is a substance leading into God substance, basically using drugs to create religious experience. Okay? And I know people find that really attractive, but I would say it's probably a dead end. There was, I remember talking to Houston Smith once, and he said he knew of a lot of people who started out, because he got involved in this too in the 60s when he was at Harvard. So if you want to read about this book called The Harvard Psychedelic Club, you can read about it. But there were 4 people experiments. It was Alport, Leary, Andrew Weil, and Houston Smith. The 4 of them were experimenting at the time, and Harvard was experimenting with LSD and so forth. And Houston said afterwards, he said, I've known a lot of people who started with these hallucinogens and then basically ended up going to meditation as a disciplined practice and using meditation precepts to pursue. He said, I don't know of anybody who's gone the other way, from the spiritual meditation to the drugs. So I guess in the best case scenario, it could be a stimulant for changing your perspective or your attachments a bit, but it also has the tendency to become a habit and also dependent. And virtue, in this sense, is not leaning on anything outside your own nature. That's the definition of virtue in this text. So anything you lean on outside your own nature will not produce delivery because it's a come-and-go external agent. When he says, do not seek outside, seek within, that includes that. Any seeking outside is bound to failure because it's externally dependent, it's a conditioned dharma, it comes and goes and doesn't activate and catalyze and saturate from within. So that's, in fact, I can tell you, Xuanzang, when he went to India, was tempted by the mushroom cult there, because there was a mushroom cult that used mushrooms for psychoactive agents, and he was told that if he took this, you know, he'd have immediate awakening, he didn't have to worry about crossing his legs and all the pain. And, you know, at first, he admitted, it's like, that's not a bad plan. But then he thought about it. He looked at the teachings in terms of the views and realized that this was relying externally and wouldn't produce the result he had hoped for, and he didn't know of any Buddha in all the texts he read that got there through mushrooms. And so he fortunately pulled back. As a result of that, he brought back the whole, what we know as almost all the Tripitaka to the modern world. I'm guessing if he'd joined the mushroom cult, he would have just tuned in, turned on, and dropped out, and we would have never had these teachings. So, but what's interesting about this goes way back. The use of these psychoactive agents as substitutes for awakening. Now, you got me going here a little bit, because when he says reduce desires here, he's not talking about your desire just for cars and wealth and money and the lottery. He's talking about a very fundamental human quality, and this is called Trishna or Tana, and it's translated as thirst. And the Buddha said, when we start to become aware that things are impermanent, passing, not real and insubstantial, we misperceive, we misjudge that situation, and we freak out and we jump to craving. And he says it comes in three kinds of this misjudgment craving. The first is called kama trishna, which is a thirst for material sensual things, including sex, but not limited to sex. It's like eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow I'm going to die. So you go on that path. But he says the second thirst is bhava trishna. Bhava trishna is you want to live forever. You want to not die. You want to extend your immortality and your youth. And so it leads to the craving for and fear of death. Craving for life, fear of death, which could lead to elixirs of immortality and so on and so forth. And he says the third one is vibhava trishna, which is the craving for non-existence. You're going, well, wait a minute. That manifests as that you want to have no suffering, no pain so you obliterate your sensibilities, either leading to self-annihilation or suicide, or to forms of addiction like alcoholism, where you're constantly muting down your consciousness and saying, I'm getting rid of suffering because I'm not allowing the possibility of the suffering to hit me. And the Buddha said all three of these, that's what he means by desires. So people, you have to understand, when he says reduce your desires, what he's talking about here, he's calling these irrational thirsts, which are based on this misperception. That's what's driving human behavior. Now, what's even more interesting about this, you could put drugs into all three of those. You could put drugs as the craving of the immediate sensual pleasure. I want to, enjoy that. You could put it into longing for extension of life and so forth, or you could put it into the numbing out of awareness and consciousness. And the Buddha said he says all of these will increase suffering, not end it. And in fact, the Lotus Sutra says this is called using suffering, foolishly trying to end suffering. It won't work. Now, what's even trickier, he said it has a manifestation in the ordinary world and in the world transcending. In the human world, and religions can have these three thirsts. So in your spiritual practices, you could be going after the first thirst. Whoa, my meditation. Whoa, I got that chakra going. Whoa, yeah, whoa, and my sexual, whoa, I really outperformed with that. Okay, that's using meditation for kama trishna. And using meditation for, oh Lord, won't you give me a Mercedes Benz? Right? My friends all drive Porsches. I must make amends. Work hard for a living, no help from my friends. Oh, Lord, give me a Mercedes-Benz. You guys know this song. Lord, won't you give me a color TV? Dialing for dollars, it's trying to find me. I wait for delivery all day till 3. Oh, Lord, won't you give me a color TV? Right? What's the last one? Give me a night on the town. I'm counting on you, Lord. Don't let me down. Show that you love me and buy the next round. Oh, Lord, won't you give me a life? So that's, you can use Buddhist chanting for the same thing. Oh, Lord, or Buddha, won't you give me, chant, give me. That's kama trishna. You say, well, I don't want all those things. I just want to live for a long time. I don't want to get old and age. Then you turn your practices into the quest for immortality. A lot of Taoism is concerned with using elixirs and meditation techniques and breathing techniques to extend your life indefinitely. Whoopee. Okay? And that's not just looking at the health spas. This is actually using religion for that goal. And the Buddha said, and you seek for it in this world, but you seek for it to have an eternal life in another world. That is also making then an eternal soul that goes off to rebirth in this heaven beyond. He said it's a form of the second thirst. Now, the third one is using religion to dull your consciousness, to escape from reality. And that you can immediately understand, you can see across traditions, including Buddhism. You can see religion being used as escape from reality, as a blotting down of consciousness and awareness, not as an opening of that. And the Buddha said this happens particularly, and the Sixth Patriarch is really going to go into it, using meditation as a withdrawal from reality, as a zoning out, as a way of pulling back from the fullness of engagement and without being attached. So meditation can be used in that way. Even ceremonies can be used in that way. There's a lot that can be used in that way. And sometimes this gets misread, oh, somebody's leading the holy life. But in fact, they're actually pulling back into a disengaged oblivion. So that's why when we have to unpack these terms and really get at it, we can see where a lot of modern things would fall along the line of these three thirds, both in the worldly sense and the world transcending sense. And what he's saying is mindfully watch this at all times. Because often the cue isn't so much what's wrong with that, is what's wrong with my motive and intention. Because if your motive and intention is to escape or to get a quick da-da-da-da-da, already you know the results is going to be distorted. That's why the Shranga says if the ground of the cause of the intention is not straight and right, then the fruit will be crooked. The results will always be crooked. So this is where this mindfulness is coming down, catching yourself at all times with these little things. They're slick. They can be really slick. And of course, we're slicked up to go that way. We're already as what does Barnum say? There's a sucker born every minute. Okay, sorry I went on. You got me going with these questions. Okay. Any announcements?
Tomorrow we get our Sutra lecture in the evenings, 7:30 p.m. And all classes go according to our schedule. If you're interested, please visit our website, berkeleymonastery.org.
Okay, we'll do the transference. And remember, we changed the words to instead of their, our. So every time you see THEI, change it to our or we.
And break became dispel, right? Break the darkness, dispel the darkness.
I think it's dispel the darkness, isn't it? May every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. Yet people hear and see how hands and hearts can find in giving unity. May their minds awake to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of our endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Sing Li San Bao.